Warm welcome to everyone. Welcome to the session. I am Lokesh MR. I am handling the subject of storage area networks and I am discussing today the module 3. This is the section module 3 of session 2. I am handling this subject along with Professor Amrut, Information Science Department. So, last class whenever we are discussing about the third module in the storage area networks, after discussing the first and second module, the first module it talks about the introduction about the storage area networks elements, and the second one is what are the infrastructures, intermediate infrastructures we are using for connecting between the host machine as well as the data centers, and the third one is most important one is increasing the performance of storage area parameters. Okay, towards that we have discussed in the first section regarding the syllabus, overview syllabus, what they have kept for the third module. That is the first thing which we have discussed, and we discussed something called information availability. The main purpose of storage area network is to distribute the information to the n number of users equally. Okay. So, like in databases, how do we store the informations in the data in a rows and columns, and when we require we extract the informations. In the same way, the large number of tetradatas are stored in the data centers and the information is provided when the host machines is requested. That is the main objective of storage area networks. Towards to that we have discussed about what is the advantages of having a information availability and what is the disadvantages of having the information availability. So, always we discuss that information is available to the host machines, required information is available for the host machines for accessibility by checking the parameters called accessibility, reliability and timeliness, like that. Assume that if the information is not available, what are the causes it occurs, like in which cases the informations may not be available, that we have discussed in the previous section, telling that we should when the system is in the repair state or when the system wants to degrade is degradation state and needs some extra patches to be added and to increase the performance, and when the system wants to restore the information and we need to take a backup, at that stages informations will not be available and it will be in the form of download fashions. Okay, towards that we discuss a measurement of information availability by checking that how the time taken for the system working, okay, the system which works, okay, as telling that mean time between failures by measuring MTBF, okay, mean time between failure, like that. So, that is nothing but the system which works efficiently till failure, okay, that is a measurement one. And the second measurement we have discussed something called mean time to repair, okay, that means the time taken for repairing the system which we come across. These were the discussions we have come across in the session 1, and this is the overview of the previous class. Okay, the second objective of this class is to understand what do you mean by business continuity terminology. All the informations which we are dealing, that means we need to provide an information to the end users bar 24/7 is to deal with the business objectives. Okay. So, what are the terminology we are using whenever we make our systems works according to the business perspectives? We need to have some standard terminologies. Okay, that will be done by using something called by using something called disaster recover and disaster restart. We will discuss the terminology of different terminology of business continuity. Okay. The first terminology we have to deal with disaster recovery. Okay, disaster recovery. So, we will discuss what do you mean by disaster recovery along with the definition and where it is used. Okay. Disaster recovery means it is nothing but the coordination process between the data as well as the system and the infrastructures which supports for the business operations. Okay. When sometimes when we are working along with different parameters, the data and the systems and the infrastructures, some disasters may occur. Okay. At that cases, we need to look and we need to plan for not being affected for the end users. Okay. So, we need to recover it. So, it is a coordination process between the system as well as the data and the infrastructures, as we have discussed that in an information availability we need to have a certain time, okay, for taking the backups, and to doing the backup operations, the other alternate systems needs to be arranged for giving a services for the end users for 24/7. Such type of recovery operations, okay, and updating the things so that the business operations will be working for 24/7, even the disasters occur. Disaster, it is not that destroying the data. Sometimes due to the overloading of the data, so the data will not be provided. At that cases, we perform some operations of mirroring operations and all. Such things and all we will do it. Okay, these is the parameters. This is the first parameters or terminology we use us whenever we make our business continuity for 24/7. So, one is data disaster recovery. It is nothing but the coordination process of a system, data and the infrastructures which is required. This is the first thing. The second one is disaster restart. Okay. Disaster restart. What do you mean by that restart? Sometimes some of the process may not be working fine. Okay, at that cases we need to perform an operations telling that we need to restart the operations so that the end users, okay, which performs the operations of the business may perform some copies of the data. That means we need to have a backups of data. So, that will be done by using a concept of disaster recovery. So, we will come across with the terminology of increasing the business continuity by these two parameters. Along with that, we are using something called the recovery point objectives. Okay, this is comes under business continuity planning and all. First, we need to understand what are the terminology we use for improving the business continuity. Okay. So, as we discussed that we have to recover the datas, okay, for increasing the performance of business continuity, and we need to perform an updating of data by using a restart, how we have discussed regarding the information's availability like that. So, the third one is we have something called recovery point objectives. Okay, recovery point objective. This recovery point objective is the point of time in which the system must be recovered after a outage. Outage means like if any disasters occur, at that time at what time, okay, we need to perform a recovery operations. That is the measurement of recovery point objective. Recovery point objective means like we have a data in the transmissions mode, and some of the days at some point of time, so the data may be lost. Okay, data may be lost. So, to identify which of the points where the data is not being reached, okay, not being reached. Okay. So, such type of concept is nothing but the recovery point objectives. So, these recovery point objectives, whether it is been of outages means the disasters may occur or it may not be disaster may occur. So, the company will be fixing some time slots, okay, time slots for recovering recovery point objectives to check whether the in the 24 hours, okay, 24 hours, whether the data is been lost or not, like that. So, we it defines actually what is the data losses. The data losses occurs whenever the communications takes place between the host machines as well as the data centers. So, sometimes the company people will be fixing some slots, okay, like let us have a recovery point objectives for 24 hours. So, that means the backups we needs to be taken care after the backups to be taken care for 24 hours. So, that means we have something called recovery point of objectives of 24 hours, okay, 24 hours. So, that tells that, so we need to create a backup to the offset tape library every midnights. That means every company organizations which runs 24/7 will fix the point of recovery as 24 hours. So, that is called as offset tape library every midnight, okay. That is one thing for perform these type of operations will be done for recovery strategies. Whenever we need to recover, if data is lost, the working data is lost, at that cases we need to recover the data which is already lost, will be taken care by the backup which we have done it every 24 hours. Okay, there is a strategies of performing a recovery point of failures for 1 hour. Okay, that means every 1 hour the data will be taken a backup. Okay, so these type of backups, recovery point of recovery point of objectives for 1 hour is called as shipping database logs to the remote site every hours. So, whether the data is kept in any remote locations, but every 1 hour the data needs to be recovered and it has to be placed. Okay, so such type of recovery point of failure 1 hour is called as shipping database logs, shipping database logs. We have a one more type of recovery point of failures in an order of minutes, okay, in a order of minutes, okay. At that cases we need to take a backups asynchronously in the remote sites, asynchronous data. That means whenever the data is been feeling that there is a corruptions, okay, there is a disasters occurs, immediately the data needs to be taken, okay, taken back. That means mirroring operations will be taken. Mirror means copying the similar type of data to the next locations. That means one more data base, okay. So, like that, okay. Recovery point of objectives by order of minutes means like mirroring of asynchronous data to the remote sites. Remote sites means the data may be kept, the data may be working as usual along with the data center and the host machines, and sometimes we need to take a backup. That backup will be taken care by using a mirroring, okay. At the remote side the data may be taking backups. We have one more concept by the name called near zero remote point of objectives, near zero remote point of objectives. These type of objectives is called as mirroring of data synchronously to the remote, in the sense that remote site, in the sense that, so whenever the operations, that means from the host machine as well as the data centers, so the data is communication, immediately once the data is communicated, it is being stored in the remote sites, okay, remote sites. Such type of operations is called as recovery point of failures, So, we have one more type of applications, okay, which is nothing but remote recovery point of failures. Okay, we have one more type of terminology, which is nothing but recovery time objectives. Okay, so recovery time objectives. Okay, so this is the recovery point of objective. The one more type of terminology is recovery time objectives. Recovery time objective means like this type of recovery is done in the system itself as well as in the application itself to recover if any disasters occurs. It is nothing but the downtime the business occurs in the client machines. Okay, so assume that the client is using the computers. Okay, that computers is having a downtime. Okay, the downtime is being recognized in the host machine itself. Such type of identifying the recovery time is nothing but the recovery time objectives. Usually we performs a recovery time of objectives by different time slots. Okay, so assume that recovery time of objectives of 72 hours. These are the fixed standard strategies we follow to make our business continuity efficient. Okay, that is the planning of business continuity. We are giving the services to the host machines by having a planning of business continuity like that. So we use a concept called recovery time objectives of 24 hours. That means, so for every 74 hours, okay, for every 74 hours there will be a down sites. So it indicates that there will be some restoring operations is taken care after every 72 hours. Okay, such type of taking the backup time. Okay, backup time needs been intimated, and it will be given intimation that every 72 hours your system or the sites which you are using will be down for a few seconds. Okay, so that intimations will be given. Okay, such intimations is nothing but a cold sites. Okay, we will discuss what do you mean by cold sites and all. So next recovery, we have one more terminology by the name called recovery time objectives of 12 hours. Okay, 12 hours. So that means every 12 hours your system which you are using or application which you are using is being kept for restoring the available informations. That means whatever the operations which you people have done it in the host machines will be restored after every 12 hours. Such type of concept is called as hot sites. Okay, hot sites. We will discuss what do you mean by hot sites and all. And we have something concept called recovery time objectives of few hours. Okay, here we have fixed that there is a 12 hours and 72 hours. So there are an objectives terminology by the name called recovery time objective of few hours. It is called as data wallet. Okay, so data wallet, we will discuss the few concepts which we are mentioning, new things like data wallet and all. What is the definition of data wallet? This data wallet is done through the hot sites. Okay, hot site means like recovery, restoring the operations which we have done it is being done for every hours, and the data is stored to the hot sites. Okay, so and even recovery time objectives for few seconds also we can do it. So seconds also we can do it. So these type of operations is done through cluster productions with bilateral mirroring of the applications. What do you mean by that? That means whenever we perform any operations in the host machines or in the data centers, those data centers immediately it performs the backups. Okay, so it won't wait for 72 hours for taking the restoring backups or 12 hours or every 1 hour, like that. Immediately whenever we performing any operations, it will be stored in the remote sites, okay, by using an applications or the system itself. Such type of concept is called as remote time objectives of few seconds. Like that, we need to use some terminology whenever we are using a business plans. As I was telling that we have something called data wallet. Okay, the data wallet is nothing but a repository of remote sites. Data wallet is nothing but the repository of remote sites where the data is periodically or continuously copied, so that if the copied information needs to the other persons will be provided through data wallet. Okay, that means, so it is nothing but a remote sites. Okay, when the operation is done, immediately the data is stored to the data wallet. That means it is a remote place where the backups is being taken every few seconds. Okay, in some cases we need to take a backup at some period of time. Okay, after 12 hours we need to take a backup. So in such type of things, okay, so like if we are taking a backup at 12 hours, okay, then we considered those type of backup is nothing but a hot sites. Okay, at that cases, like when we are using a word called hot sites, okay, hot sites, we are taking the backups, we are taking a backup with the hot sites with the enterprises operations. Enterprises operations in the sense that it should have a required hardware components, extra hardware components, and it should require extra operating systems and applications and network supporting systems for taking the backups. Okay, and then it will also not taking the backups for every 12 hours. If they need a recovery operations is being taken care by these hardware, special hardware itself, enterprises operations hardware itself and operating system hardware itself, applications hardware itself, for providing the recovery operations. So such type of recovery places which have a extra enterprises hardware as well as the operating systems, and then recovery network support systems and application systems is called as hot sites. Okay, we have sometimes we use existing infrastructure itself. Okay, instead of having a special infrastructures for taking the backup, we uses the existing IT infrastructures, okay, for taking the backups. That means already we are using some infrastructures for performing a operations of storage area networks. In that existing storage area networks itself, we uses some backups for, we uses the existing hardware resources for taking the backup. Such type of backup is called as cold sites. Cold sites means where the sites of an enterprise's operations is moved to the disasters with minimal IT infrastructures and environment facilities which is being placed. Okay, that means it does not have any extra facilities are available for taking the backups. If the existing backup itself, we are taking the backups. Okay, so and as I was telling that whenever we are performing a backup recovery time of objectives for every few seconds, we are using a group of clusters. Okay, that means immediately once the operation is done, so it needs to take a backups. That will be done by using a several clusters of servers. Okay, that means a group of servers and other necessary resources are taken for performing a recovery operations for every few seconds. Okay, so that if any single failure occurs, immediately can be recovered through that things, instead of using a hot sites and cold sites. So if we are taking the recovery operations, performing the recovery operations by using a clusters of servers, it will be a more advantageous. So that means, so any single failures occurs in the systems is immediately being recovered by a group of servers, okay, to make a high availability, and also it performs the operations of load balancing. Okay. These are the terminologies we have adapted for developing a business continuity plan for storage area networks. So, efficient storage area networks. So, how do we do that? That will be, these are the things, okay, terminology we use as for developing the business cycles, business continuity cycles. We will discuss what are the business continuity cycles now. So, business planning cycle. Okay. This is the, by using a previous terminologies, we will discuss about the business planning life cycles. So, in a business, the main objective of storage area networks is to give a services to the end users for 24/7. To perform that, the business people needs to, the organization needs to have some specialized resources and specialized resources to maintain the 24/7 operations. Okay. So, to perform that, we need to have a certain plans. Okay. So, there are a 5 stages of planning whenever we are performing an operations. Okay. The first planning is establishing the objectives. So, what do you mean by that? That means whenever we started with the lesson, okay, started with this session. So, I have listed out few things. The first, I will give the previous introduction, class introduction, then I will discuss about the terminology, and then I will discuss about the business plan life cycles. Like that, I have already fixed some objectives to this class. Similarly, whenever we do an operations of making our objectives should be the storage area network should be working efficiently. First, we need to establish a establish an objective. These established objectives needs to perform an operations called analysis. Whatever the objective we have fixed is needs to have a analysis. These analysis need to perform some design operations, and then we have to develop the design operations along with the objectives, and the analysis it is done. Okay. Then it has to do the operations of implementation. It has to do after designing and analysis, and we need to perform the operations of implementation. This implementation needs to train for the things which we are learning operations, what is done is proper or not, and also it needs to perform the operations of testing, and also it needs to operations of assessing the operations which is done, it is proper or not, and it will be given to the established department. So, objectives which is established department, whether it is properly assessed or not, and everything has to perform a maintenance. Okay, it has to be perform the maintenance. Let us understand each concepts clearly. Okay. When the business continuity planning life cycles is done, okay, like we need to establish an objectives, and we need to analyze it, and we need to design and develop, and then we need to perform an implementation. That implementations needs to perform an operations called training. That means learning the things which we have done, it is properly or not. After training, it needs to test whether it is working fine, and then it is to be assessed, and it should be maintained like that. Some steps needs to be followed. So, let us discuss the first objective is nothing but establishing the establishing the objectives. How do we establish? So, the establishing the objective is done by determining the business continuity requirements. Determining the business continuity requirements. How do we do that? So, for if different organizations needs a different requirements, have a different requirements. Those different requirements is being determined by the business continuity team, and it will estimate the scopes as well as the budget to achieve the requirements. Okay. So, every times we need to use the scopes, we have to understand the scope of an objectives, and also we need to have a budget plan for performing the objectives, and we need the business continuity team, business continuity planning cycles will form a team, so that the expert committee members in different areas of the business will be checking fitting the objectives, whether these objectives is proper, which is fixed for these organizations or not. So, those people will be an internal people as well as the external people. So, the internal people who knows the concepts regarding the business plans, he has fixed the objectives, may not be knowing the external effects by their objectives. So, that the external people also they evaluate the internal people's objectives which they have done it. Okay, and they will be creating a business continuity plans. Okay, by using defining some policies. So, that means some policies been fixed by the internal people for making the business to work 24/7. So, that means the first step is to establish a business objectives by identifying the scope as well as the budget. Okay. The second thing is analysis. After fixing the objective, so how much resources needs to be given and what is the cost of the resources we need to provide, and if we invest that type of cost and what are the scopes will be available, then we need to analyze the data which been fixed for the each objectives. So, by taking some data profiles. Okay, data profiles means like the resources which we have, the end users which is been providing the informations, like the main objective of business continuity is to provide the services to the end users 24/7. So, these type of opportunities cannot be given to all the persons. We need to identify the privileged people in the storage area networks, and then only we need to provide. So, that will be done by using an analysis. We collect the information from the data profile or the business process or infrastructure supports and dependencies and the frequency of using the infrastructures. Everything every information is being considered, and we perform the operations, and we develop the software by considering that business impact analysis, by collecting the informations of the all the resources. For example, assume that we need to provide a services for one company. So, that company needs to share the informations, who are the end users and what type of IT infrastructures required for them. So, every people may not require the infrastructures, high-end infrastructures. Only few people require high-end infrastructures, and other people requires middle infrastructure, so that we can reduce the budget. Okay, and the scopes also can be identified by analyzing the data profiles and the business process they are doing, and the dependencies of the other people and the business infrastructures, and they will develop a business impact analysis by analyzing all these. Okay, and they will identifying the critical business process and they will assign the recovery priorities. As I was telling that some special people will needs at high end infrastructures. So for them we need to give a higher priority. Those will be done by using a business impact analysis, and also it will develop some risk analysis. As I was telling that whenever we used to use an infrastructures for 24/7, it may not work for 24/7. So we need to divide the 24/7 for updating the softwares and for giving update recovering the taking the backup functions and all. That means the risk analysis has to be analyzed, and we need to create a mitigation strategies. Mitigation strategies means some error any occurs, so we need to immediately recover things. For that, how much time it requires for recovering the any errors occurs, those things also should be done by considering a recovery analysis like that. And also we need to analyze the cost benefit analysis. That means depends upon the cost benefit analysis also will be analyzed for risk analysis. That means if we are using a recovery operations, whether the cost is reduced or not, or else we can whether we can replaces the new components instead of recovery components. Those analysis in all the dimensions will be done at the analysis part. Okay, along with that, so we evaluate all the options, okay, which we have fixed for each objective in the analysis part. Okay, next, this is the second stage of business continuity plan. Okay, and the third, we need to go for a design and developments. Okay, so design and developments will be done by the structure teams. Okay, so that means each applications where the people who are developing a softwares will be designed for one thing, and the people who are design and application softwares will be divided into one team, individual teams, and the role is to manage a softwares, and operating system is the second stage, where the taking the input from the applications and it is providing to the infrastructures, and then infrastructures is one stage and storages is one stage. Like that, each stage in the operations needs to be divided into different individual teams, and the roles and responsibilities will be assigned for the individual teams in the design and developing the different operations. And these different operations, it's not only to store the data to the storage and provide the informations to the storages, it also needs to develop for recovery operations. Okay, and it's also used for damage assessment operations, risk analysis operations, like that. Okay. ಅಯ್ಯೋ
ಏನಿಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಗುಳಿಸೂರು ತಿನ್ನಿಸ್ಬೋದು,
ಮಾಸ್ಕ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಇರಲಿ ಇದು ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅದಕ್ಕೆ. So I was talking about regarding the design and development team. Okay, these design and development teams should follow some individual operations. Okay, individual operations for damage assessments with respect to the infrastructures and application recovery, like that. Through that, we perform operations like data protection strategies and developing an infrastructures, efficient infrastructures, and developing some applications regarding the continuous solutions for the risk analysis, and if any emergency occurs, the response will be provided, and if any if any recovery occurs, the recovery will be known, okay, by this application things, and when the things needs to be perform a restart procedures, everything's been done it in the design and the development team. So, the fourth stage of cycle is implementation things. In this we need to whatever the design is done, whether the software design, operating systems and infrastructure, storage, everything which we have done it is being done it in the implementations. So, that means we need to develop a risk management and mitigation procedures needs to be followed whenever we are performing the implementations. Mitigation procedures means, mitigation means identifying the resources which go for the disasters stage. That means we need to take the backups and we need to take the replica or a mirroring of the data which we are performing, and we need to know how many resources are present in the particular things like that, so that we can prepare a disaster recovery sites. Okay, sites, I am using the word called sites, is used nothing but a place where we can perform a recovery operations, okay, for taking the backups and all, that is called as a site. Okay. So, we design the risk management and mitigation procedures at the disaster at the implementation stage, and also we do something called redundancy of every resources to avoid a single point of failures. What do you mean by that? So, whenever we perform an operations of implementing any infrastructures, that infrastructures may be a disaster, may occur disasters. To avoid such type of disasters, we perform a redundant of implementations. Copy of all the implementations is done in the implementation stage. At the fifth stage, we as I was telling that every person needs to perform a training, okay, whether it is a software or whether the person who is done the designing and implementation needs to know what are the procedures follows, okay, by checking the remote sites, okay, by checking the remote sites. That means he needs to identify the backups, okay, and he needs to identify the replications parameters for in a regular basis to check how the business been designed and how the business been developed and how implementations occurs in the things, okay. All this is done in the fifth cycle, which is nothing but a training and testing and maintaining and all. So, training is done for emergency response when the disaster is declared, and training is also, training department is also is called as a recovery team, and those team needs to follow some recovery procedures in a continuous fashions, and similar scenarios needs to be followed. When every scenario, when they are performing a recovery, they have to learn it and they have to adapt those recovery operations. And if any damage as whenever we following the procedures, it has to be reviewed by the recovery plans, okay, and it has to be given to the objectives telling that these are the problems we have faced whenever we performing an operations of implementation, design and analysis part. Everything will be done by the training stages, and similarly we need to deploy all the strategies which we have designed and planned, and we need to check the performance evaluations, and we need to identify the limitations of telling that this is the infrastructures which we have developed, and it will be work for a certain period of time, and it is work for a certain infrastructures. Like that, the testing needs to be done by using a different infrastructure like that, and we need to identify the assess of all these operations, and we take the backups in the form of report, and we need to intimate those informations to the objective team for performing, for updating the business plan and perform the recovery operation, and restart procedures needs to be updated in a regular basis. Like that, everything is being given to the objective team, so that the business operations will be done. So, this is the main important procedures are the cycles we follow to make our business continuity for 24/7. Okay, the main purpose of this analysis and study and all is to make the informations available 24/7 for the host machines as well as if any disasters occurs in the data centers, immediately will be recovered, okay. But for that we need to follow certain procedures like that, establishing the objectives, analyzing the data profiles and designing according to the requirements and giving the privileges for the individual teams, and then performing an implementation procedures, and all the testing and training of the things which we have already done, assessing the environment and give to the maintenance department. Everything will be done by using this cycle. This cycle is called as business planning life cycles. Business planning life cycle for making our storage area network efficiently work, and it should be work for 24/7 like that. So, this is the things which we have come across. I will start and I will end the session. Thank you so much.